ضد فيروس كورونا. احمي نفسك، احمي بلدك.
Welcome back. You're still watching the Daily Debate as we did focus on the first segment of the episode on the presidential activities of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and the meeting that he held today on Sunday at the Presidential Palace on the occasion of the Women's Day and the Mother's Day in Egypt that we celebrate on March the 21st. And of course, President al-Sisi discussed a number of economic measures that will be taken to be or implemented to be taken against the impact of the coronavirus pandemic in the upcoming weeks and months. And one of them is to be focusing on the role of youths in Egypt, and more specifically the World Youth Forum and the latest announcements by the World Youth Forum to be countering the coronavirus pandemic, not just in Egypt, but from Egypt to the world, a message of love, peace and support. And tonight I'm honored to be having with me in the studio Engineer H.Shamarka, the architect, the planning expert and the business developer. Thank you very much for being with us tonight.
Thank you, Ahmed. Always a pleasure.
The pleasure is all mine. First of all, how did you see the efforts of the youth in Egypt to be countering the coronavirus pandemic?
First of all, allow me to send out our condolences to all the infected and all the families that lost the loved ones, yes. And to send out these celebrations to the Mother's Day as well. The youth have been doing great parts, especially the ones who are engaged in certain medical volunteer work and certain establishments, yes. In order to be able to support for the provisions and the precautionary measures which are being taken by the state and by the administration. Mm-hmm. So there could be more done, and the WIF, or the Youth Forum, the World Youth Forum, has sent out for the awareness campaign to just bring everyone on board with the objectives of the World Youth Forum, which was prosperity, solidarity, harmony. Just to remind everyone that there's a great role for every person sitting at home or staying at home, and it could save a lot of lives by just doing something as simple as staying at home. Especially with the incubation period being 14 days, especially with all these sort of things. So definitely the youth have a great role to play in order to prevent this novel virus that we're experiencing.
Yes, in the past week, how did you see the move by the World Youth Forum and the young men and the young women of Egypt to be speaking about the coronavirus pandemic, what to do and what not to do in those days that we are staying at home at?
Yes, well, we live in a population with a huge category of youth. We have almost 60% of youth, and starting with the universities being cut off by the ministry, by Dr. Hala, which is a great precautionary measure that I commend, and going to that the youth have the part of passing forward the precautionary measures. So you have knowledge. There's three levels of understanding the virus, and or to start having measures against the pandemic. There's a lot of people that are aware, they have the knowledge, not implementing, and then there's the second level who are practicing. Actually practicing, where you see them using hand sanitizer, washing their hands, keeping the distance of 2 meters, and not touching doorknobs, so on and so forth. And then you have the third, which is what we are trying to bring on board, the youth doing the passing the awareness campaign across to everyone around the country, because We're facing another hidden enemy, which is a high illiteracy rate that could, especially in the places where you have livestock, and then this will allow more spreading of the disease. So the youth living in those rural areas have great role to play in order to control the spread of the pandemic, definitely. So this is what have been happening throughout the past week in order to raising the awareness and to bring the youth as a platform, as an age group just together in order to send across the same message. This is serious. This is not H1N1. This is mutating. Everything you do has a great impact, positively or negatively. If you care about your loved ones, know that if you went out for no reason whatsoever, you will come back without symptoms, having incubation, and they will get sick. And if you have a child, they might suffer gravely, and if you have an elder mother or father, they will suffer gravely as well. So, in contrary to what happened during multiple events of political whatever it is, now we need to stay at home. It's not by going down or doing anything. You're not going to help by going down to the street or doing anything. You just need to stay at home and prevent this enemy from just spreading around throughout breathing. Just simply, it's a flu, but it's a killer.
Yes, staying at home is the main task for the citizens across Egypt and across the world. But how did you see the governmental efforts ever since the outbreak erupted here in Egypt in maybe a couple of weeks ago or a week ago? How did you see the governmental efforts under the directives of President Al-Sisi and, of course, Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli and the Minister of Health, Dr. Hala Zaid?
Exceptional. I have to commend and praise all the efforts which are being done. We could have been facing in the second week of the pandemic greater numbers. We're talking about 295, like Dr. Noha mentioned, 295 cases. You have 10 deaths against the volume of the population and against what was expected. This is all as a result of the preemptive precautionary measures that we're taking very precisely and very strictly, and applied and implemented throughout by the administration and by the Minister of Health. And I believe there's still a big portion of the challenge to go on. There's still a huge part of the trip, and we need just to maintain. It's not over. It will not be over soon. There's still a lot to be done. Just focus with the bulletins which are being sent, follow the instructions, stay at home, do the precautions, don't try to improvise, don't try to do something creative. This has been studied all around the world. But when it comes to the actual numbers, the third week of each, so if you look at China, if you looked at Italy, if you looked at Spain, the third week is the most critical week, because it's either you cannot control the spread anymore, or you have a chance of just being, Wuhan have just declared that they are having zero cases, and it already initiated in Wuhan. So in order for us to be like this, we have to learn a little bit from the Chinese. Stick to the rules, stay at home, don't go down, read a book, do anything, just stay at home.
Yes, on the other hand, we did see in the past week, and more specifically on Saturday, the footage of the armed forces going out on the streets and sanitizing the streets at Tahrir Complex, Anwar al-Sadat metro station, Cairo University, those big installations. How do you see the efforts of the armed forces in this crisis?
It's very exceptional. We could not have done, we could not have contained what has been contained in the numbers without the help of the military forces and the quick interference with just clearing the streets or taking measures like making e-learning or making the exams or just postponing the whole academic year and so on and so forth. Sanitizing very critical places like metro stations is a very high category of provisionary measures. However, we need to help. We need to keep they're doing their part very well. plus the economical part as well. Look at the amount of money that has been preemptively just dumped into the
100 billion pounds.
100 billion to be. That's not what have been. So we're talking about the 2 past weeks. You have suffered more than that, but
That's a new relief package.
The new relief package. The president has already taken measures from week 1. Even when it comes to medical equipment, face masks, face shields, the U.S. has an issue. They have scarcity. We don't. You have to understand that this comes from the lot of work that has been done. And just to be clear, in order for the doctors, I really want to send a clear message to everyone and commend the doctors who are staying 24 hours across to take care of everyone. In order for them to go home earlier, you need to stay home. That's very clear. So let's help one another.
To go home in the first place for them, for the doctors.
For the doctors, yeah. They're not going home. They're being infected on a daily basis. They're risking their lives, even starting with the mentorship of Dr. Hala Zayed by going to China, taking this initiative.
How did you see that step as building a bridge of friendship at a very critical timing for China and of course for Italy, from Egypt to be sending medical equipment and sending help and cooperation from the country to China, to Italy and to different countries around the world?
Very, very, very smart, very shows leadership. It shows our role in the region and our role to come after this pandemic and after this crisis, but definitely solidarity. And that we are able to even help one of the most powerful countries in the world in the time of crisis. So Egypt is able to provide to the leadership countries in the world economically throughout times of crisis because as a cultural society we can come together very quickly in the facing of crisis, and we can have great measures of solidarity that can actually become miracles, and people describe it in different ways like it happened before. And I'm sure, yeah, Dr. Hala Zayed doing this step proved, gave leadership attitude to all the medical staff around the country that they need to have initiative. They need to go the 11th mile and need to do the extra steps in order to prevent this common enemy that we're having right now.
Yes, speaking of the governmental efforts that took place today, of course, under the leadership of President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, we'll be focusing on the meetings of President al-Sisi with Prime Minister Dr. Mustafa Madbouli on Saturday to be facing up, to be countering against the coronavirus pandemic in Egypt in the upcoming report.
Egypt has suspended mass prayers at mosques and shut down churches in an unprecedented move aimed at curbing the outbreak of the novel coronavirus in the populous country. The Endowments Ministry decided to temporarily suspend congressional and Friday prayers in all mosques across the country to prevent the spread of the pandemic. Prayers in mosques will be suspended for 2 weeks, with the call for prayer, also known as adhan, given out to alert worshippers about prayer times with slight alteration. Earlier on Saturday, the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, Sheikh Ahmed al-Tayyib, suspended prayers at Al-Azhar Mosque until the virus is contained. Egypt has earlier upped restrictions on the duration of the mass prayers and the length of sermons and halted all other gatherings at mosques, including funeral and marriage services, to stem the virus from the spread. It has also closed schools, universities, and limited mass gatherings. The Coptic Orthodox Church also on Sunday said it was temporarily shutting down all churches nationwide and suspending masses as part of the preventive measures implemented by the state to contain the spread of the novel coronavirus pandemic. The church said it will also close halls designated for funeral services at churches and limit funeral services to the family of the deceased only. The Coptic Orthodox Church called on Copts at home and abroad not to take lightly the current crisis and commit to measures implemented by responsible authorities to participate effectively in averting the number of those infected and dead from the disease worldwide.
Welcome back. Engineer Ahmed H.Shamarka, if we can focus on the decision of the government to be suspending prayers at mosques and churches, how did you see that on Saturday?
I see it as definitely it's a sad measure to be taken. We are a very spiritual society, and but
necessary.
I see it very necessary, and people should actually follow it very strictly, because during prayers a lot can be spread. So yeah, sad but necessary.
On the other hand, how did you see the response of the people or the opinions of the Egyptian people on social media? Because we can see a lot of misinformation, fake news on social media those days. How did you see the response of the Egyptian people towards the pandemic in Egypt?
It's diverse. There's people who are doing their part using the social media outlets in terms of spreading awareness and raising awareness and supporting the infected and the pandemics, giving early news if it's in your region, in your area, in your zone. And there are people who are they have been there all the time. They're either just opportunists in terms of trying to spread, having a little bit of publicity, a little bit of attention in order for others to follow them. Please stay away from them. No, just follow the people who are either medical staff or people who are in the regulatory bodies, the authorities, the ministries. Don't go just channeling to people who are just trying to use this crisis and this very sad time that we're in for their best advantage. Try to be very distinguishing between who you should read about or read what they're writing on social media outlets and who you should stay clear from. Because if you went and start praying in the street in front of your home and bringing all your neighbors, you haven't helped. You infected them, you infected yourself, and then you take the disease back to your family, and you didn't do anything. God has not asked any one of us to do that.
Yes, and finally, how did you see the economic measures taken by President Al-Sisi, but in the sectors of tourism and industry, because those will be hardly hit following the facing up to the coronavirus or the fight against the coronavirus pandemic?
I'm very optimistic when it comes to that. I think with the measures happening right now, we are in what we call a day-by-day situation report. Even the World Health Organization is releasing a day-by-day situation report. And if we looked at the situation reports economically, I think we're doing a great job. And the precautionary measures that have been implemented are doing exceptional positive outcomes to the future after the pandemic, because we are in an African region. We have the region around us, and most of the tourism have been impacted.
Yes.
You look at Europe, look at US. And I think coming out of it, we will have a huge opportunity when it comes to the tourism sector to actually gain a lot rather than actually losing. When it comes to industrialization, to the industry as well, I think it's the same thing, because there's a lot of supplies, manufactured equipment and products will not be able to be supplied by certain countries, and we can actually start having market share in terms of doing that. So I think in both of them they will be hit, but the rise after that, just by following the instructions and just controlling that and averting the numbers from increasing and spreading, we have a huge opportunity for the economical reform to actually flourish after the pandemic is over.
Yes,
so
and hopefully,
it's depending, you know, it's depending on one another. It's you can take it lightly right now, and then the whole country is impacted, and you will get impacted. Your pound that you have in the bank will cost way less after that, or to cost way more.
Yes, and hopefully we will be beating the coronavirus pandemic as soon as possible. Engineer Ahmed H.Shamarka, the architect, planning expert, and the business developer, thank you very much for being with us today.
Thank you very much, Rahman. Thank you.
And this brings us to the end of the Daily Debate for tonight. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.